So Mongolian wrestling and culture, there's no real difference, right? So for a large part of like Mongolian culture and being a man, like you have to be good at wrestling. It just comes from wartime, right? So wrestling, horse riding and archery, you have to be good at those three things. Now it's a little bit different because most guys kind of do one or the other, maybe two things, but they kind of specialize in one. But for Mongolian wrestling in particular, it's their main source of entertainment. It's like it proves and it shows that you're, a man and that you're strong. And before, when you're a good wrestler with a janga or in your sum, in your town, your village, you are considered in that town or within that tribe a deity in a way, right? So like no one can touch you. They give you everything. Sometimes there's stories that they used to give their wives to the wrestlers, right? Whenever they would come by their home or something like that. So being a wrestler and being in Bökh in general in Mongolian culture is like, it's kind of like this, the culture centered around it in a large way. You know what I mean? And to understand Bökh, you also have to understand the culture. There's no separation. It's not just a sport. It just became that kind of later on. So
蒙古教的历史有很悠久的历史，因为我们这个蒙古这个考古学家从我们这里找到了一个关于蒙古社交的这个古代的这个游牧，在岩石上、石头上画画，那个画画那个是士兵起初，大概有2到3万年之前，那会儿对，那会儿就有蒙古社交。
Within Bökh, like, first of all, you're wearing the banjil and the toho, right? This with the big pants that they have on, with the kind of like these leg sleeves, okay? And those represent the art of the women. So the women actually make those, and it shows like the skill and the artistry of like, the craftsmanship of women's art in Mongolian culture. And they design it different ways and different colors. And then you have the jacket, which is the armor, right? So the jotik, it's called jotik. It represents the old armor they used to wear. And when they would wrestle, they would actually turn the armor backwards, which is why it looks like it looks now. Now they just make it that way. And then you have the janga, which symbolizes a couple of different things. It has its Buddhist and shaman, elements inside of it, but they each have their own, like each color has their own meaning with sky or earth or fire or courage, and different things like that. So, and when you wear it, it shows like you're an elite, you're a top wrestler. So because the Mongolians now, like today, are a mixture of shamanism and Mongolian shamanism and Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of the elements you see kind of, inside of Bökh, even such as the lion dance, right? Before each competition, you do something called makshik, right? Or deva, just dancing, right? Makshik is the particular lion dance. If you see them do it, it's all like, it all has traces into the shamanism, right? And actually before, each region would have their own dance. They had the butterfly dance, there's the eagle, there's the deer bounding, there's the lion, there's so many different kinds. And even before that, each individual little place would have their own separate thing too. And now it's just kind of become one thing, right? Maybe the last 30 years or so. Maybe a little bit before that. The timelines are a little bit rough in Mongolian culture because they don't write anything down, right? So it's a little tough to know exactly when things change. But so everything that Mongolians do for the wrestling ties into their culture, including even the way that the style is played, right? So the way that Bökh is played is very much about circles and angles, similar to Shuai Jiao, right? But a little bit different in certain ways, aspects, because of the rules setting, right? But if you look at Mongolian culture, they say it's like a circle culture. Their yurts, it's a circle, right? They always have bowls, and which is again a circle. They always put bowls in front of their homes, which is a circle. Like everything's about circle. Even the style, it's kind of how they perceive the world, right? It's a little bit different than, I would say, like judo, which is very in and out, very linear, right? So how they perceive the world is how they've created this style in a way, right? And I think that's fascinating. I think that's something hard that foreigners have a hard time with that part of it, because we see it differently. So it's like, how do you learn Bökh? You have to understand how they perceive, life. And then you're like, oh, things start to click, right? And then even their cultural things, their traditions start to click and make more sense, whether you believe it or not, right? So yeah, everything is about circles. A lot of their techniques, a lot of their setups, a lot of their gripping and how they manipulate people, right? It's not just lifting, but everything is kind of pulling in this kind of circular pattern. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say with like culture mixed in, the traditions mixed in with the Bökh. It's just like every little piece comes from something. And even the boots, right? So traditionally, Mongolians, you'll see in like Mongolia, Outer Mongolia, they have the kind of, the toe looks like this, right? It's pointed up. Now we have different boots on. These are actually Manchurian style, okay? That got very popular from the Ujimchin wrestlers, a place called Ujimchin in Shilingo. So originally Mongolians were the other boots, and the reason why they have it is because whenever they walk across the grass, they don't want to destroy it. The grass is everything to them, right? Because it feeds their animals and they have to take care of the earth. It's all about a balance with nature and earth, right? So even their boots when they're wrestling is made to kind of glide across the grass and not rip it up, okay? But again, now, modern times, they've changed it because these shoes that I'm wearing now are more about, they're more for speed and for a little bit more tricky footwork, because the Inner-Mongolian style of Bökh is about trips. It's not leg grabbing anymore. So they kind of changed the boot to suit that, right? But a lot of interesting stuff to learn about, like the relation between the culture and the wrestling.
不相同的地方就是中国式摔跤可以抱腿，而蒙古摔跤不可以抱腿，其他方面很接近，对技术方面很接近，大部分技术都一样。最强的就是站立吧，这样脚上的技术吧，腿法应该是怎么说？对。It's kind of weird, like my whole life actually kind of twisted in a way once I got here. At first I was pure like Shuai Jiao, like Chinese wrestling, that's what I was all about. And I always knew something was important about Bökh. Like I just knew, like the culture, something said, come over here, come to this place.
And I kind of denied it for years and went back and forth with toying with the idea. And then Ariella was like, okay, let's just go there, right? So we came, and once I got here, it's like, I just saw everything for what it was. Like, all the stuff we talk about in Shuai Jiao or even Chinese martial arts, in Mongolian wrestling, you know, and the culture, it just, everything we talk about Mabu, like horse stance and being soft and all that, it just was. It's just part of their life. And it comes from like still living the kind of warrior lifestyle in a way, as much as you can today, that they did when these styles developed and were kind of in their prime, right? So it kind of opened the door and showed me like another level, right, where I could really be with this. And also it kind of changed my perspective on how I view things in life. You just learn about other cultures, and you learn about the people and how they think, right? The psychology behind each kind of different people. And you're like, wow, we're so similar but so different. What can I take from these people and kind of enhance myself with? And that's kind of why we start doing like Bökh and our you know, teaching about Mongolian culture, because it's not like we drank the Kool-Aid too much, right? And we're just like, oh, Mongolians are the best. It's the fact that we saw good things within their culture, within their traditions, and within their wrestling that we could put into our own life to make us understand even the harmony between us and nature and just being a human, right? And you know, like for instance, Mongolians, because they're nomadic people, right? Nowadays, not so many. That's another reason. So because of that, they have to rely on each other. And if something happens, you know, there's no just electricians and plumbers, you know, come in your house. You have to rely on everyone in your kind of village, right, or in your tribe. So you have to be kind to everyone in some way, right? You have to be kind, and you have to be respectful, and kind of everyone. You might need anyone's help at any second. You don't know who, you don't know when. So I like that, man, because we kind of come very. In the West, we're in the, you know, we're pretty much individuals, and it's such an extreme that we stop caring about everyone else except for ourselves. And so I'm learning how to be like less selfish in a way, right? And that's really changed even how I look at wrestling. Like, I mean, I can go on, but it's like for me, when you come here and you do Bökh, you're going to lose a lot. I mean, I did 2 Notams in the last 2 days and lost both first rounds, right? It's not usual that I do that, but it fucking happens. It happens all the time. So you learn to deal with losses, because in life, like, that's a big part of it. Like, you lose, you win some, you lose some. And how do you do the next day? How do you keep going? And how do you like keep your mind strong, right? There's a guy I train with called Unkmin, and I remember he's really good. He kept losing like for like a couple weeks. And he went back to his grassland, and he like just kind of prayed to the earth, right? Prayed to his land. And he like just disappeared, and he came back like, I don't know, a couple weeks later, and he said that's what he did the whole time. But he truly believed the land was blessing him, right? He had to go back and kind of find harmony with himself in the land. And once he came back, I kid you not, this kid was killing everyone. He was winning Notams, he's doing, I was like, damn, this shit works, you know? But it's like stuff like that, just understanding more about their perspective, like I was saying. And now I'm starting to get it after a couple of years of being here, and I'm seeing how it kind of changes how I just walk through life. So
他学习的挺好，因为他喜欢这个蒙古文化，喜欢蒙古社交，他非常努力，希望他能够发挥自己的真正的实力，更多学习社交方面的知识。
So with the no weight limit, no time limit, no age limit, there's a couple rules with Bökh. It's like how you train changes because before when you're doing Shuai Jiao or when you're doing judo or sambo, you have a weight limit. The body type roughly. Might be some skinnier guys, some shorter, thicker guys, but roughly it's the same weight as you. Some stronger, some not as strong, but you kind of have the overall like gist of how you're gonna play, and then it becomes more of like an athletic thing. Like I gotta train to be more conditioned than him, stronger than him, faster than him. But when you're doing Bökh, like you go against everything you can imagine. Short and fat, short and skinny, tall and monstrous, right? Like you just gotta be prepared. So when you're training, it's like they have a thing they say here. When I first got here, I really had to get it in my head. It said, never fear the big guy and don't underestimate the small people, right? Because it's a natural habit, especially as a Westerner. You see someone you think is under you, right? And you know, weaker than you or something, and you just want to bulldoze them, and then you get thrown here, right? Because he might be like a 12-time champion in something, okay? So when you train, you have to like constantly adapt. And I think the training here is a little bit more relaxed than other places. It's not as, I would say, like athletic in a way, but at the same time, like you're constantly drained because you're constantly having to, your mind works more than anything. Like you're like, oh shit, I gotta spar with this big dude. Next thing it's like a guy who's 5'3", and you're like, oh, I gotta, what? But he's a Shuai Jiao champion like 12 times, right? So you're constantly learning how to adapt and also to respect people, So, and when it comes to just, I guess in life, it's like you learn in a large way that how to be a warrior, right? Like courage is a big thing here. They always talk about courage and spirit and feeling. They say feeling. You got to find your feeling. When you're going against so many different kinds of people, by the end of it, I say spend one summer here doing some nadam. By the end of it, you don't fear nothing. You look at a big guy, you're like, oh, okay, what's up? How you want to go down? Like you don't look at it the same anymore. In America, we always ask how much you weigh, right? We always want to ask how much do you weigh, and then especially jiu-jitsu, and then if they're too big, you're like, no, I can't train with you, right? It's like you get this kind of fear that you don't want to get injured, but here you have to deal with it, and it shows you a little glimpse into the mentality of real war, and that's why they do it out here. Even with they don't have like a designated place. They just pick a location you don't know, you go, and could be any type of weather, right? And I like that mentality because it's as raw as it gets. Like it's as raw as it gets without really hurting someone, right? You're safe, but you're like, this is how it really is to go. I'm going into battle with a person. I don't know who they are. I don't know their size. I don't know their skill. I know nothing about them, but I have to be prepared to adapt, right? Now you take that out of wrestling and like it helps you advance in life. You just learn how to adapt to anything. You're not afraid of anything. And you see the Mongols, how they walk, especially different from like a Chinese guy, for instance, like a Han Chinese guy walking next to a Mongol. There's a big difference. And it really, a large part of it comes from them just doing Bökh since they're little, right? They're just not afraid of anything. So people kind of think of it as like, oh, they're kind of like barbaric and uneducated. It's not that. They just don't care, right? And I think it's much more, one, it's beautiful, but it's also easier to go through life, and it's easier to become more successful when you are confident with who you are, right? So for me, that's like a big thing, because when I first moved here, I was, I thought I was badass, right? But at the same time, I had this weird kind of fear with Mongolians, because every competition they win that I've been to for grappling, doesn't matter if it's sambo or whatever, and I'm like, oh shit, he's a Mongolian. Like now I'm like, oh, that's some boy, you know what I mean? Oh, that's so and so. It's just another person now, right? So it really kind of helped me crack through this kind of barrier I had as a martial artist to like, now I go with anyone else, I'm like, what's up? Like I wrestle with Mongolians, who are you? So I think that's a lot that I've learned with just like the no weight division and the no time limit and all that. It also teaches you, I think a big part is patience. Like, we don't realize how rushy we are as people. Like we're fucking rushy. Like, especially coming from the West or coming from like a more civilized society, or I hate that term, but when people come from these cities and everything's rushy, we don't realize how much that has played into our life and how we actually react to the world, right? Like it took me a year to even start to understand that. They always say, you go so fast, slow down. Why are you trying to go so crazy? And I'm thinking, this is just normal speed, right? But now I'm realizing more and more, I'm like, oh, because Bökh teaches you patience. Like, you get what you want if you just relax, settle down, look at observe everything. They're like, Bökh wrestlers here are like psychologists of the body. They just know everything. If you blinking too much, they're like, he's got to go now, right? So it's like, how, like, when you take that out of wrestling and look at life like that, it makes you more observant and aware of the truth of what's happening. You get to see everything that's happening in the world. And I think the last year, it's changed me completely. Like, it's like, I don't know how to say it without sounding kind of weird, but it's like I see everything that's really happening in the world. From, you know what I mean? Like, there's not much I can do with everything, but I can see it. And slowly but surely, I'm learning to kind of express it more. And hopefully I can kind of teach that to more people, because I think it can benefit them, right? Just kind of like slow down and observe and become aware. And man, you'll start to notice not just the reality, but like the beautiful aspects of it too, and the kind of scary ones. But that's just part of it, you know. I'll say it like this: first things first, I gotta win. Like, I want to earn a janga, but that's not like my end thing, right? That's just actually the first goal. Most people would probably say, okay, that's good, I'm done. It's like, no, I gotta earn a janga, and then I want to actually start winning and beating the best people. And then it's like, from there, it's starting to really spread Bökh around the world, you know. And I don't mean on a low level. I mean, I want international. I want a federation where there's people traveling all around the world to do Bökh, right? Where I'm helping Mongolians have, you know, a chance to see the world as well by spreading their own culture and art. Because that's like one of the biggest parts for me here, is like falling in love with Mongolian culture. You're realizing in what's going on politically, you're like, how do we keep this alive? And it's not about, you know, it's not too much about politics actually. It's just about its influence nowadays. It's like spreading the art, because the art is main part of their culture. So if you continue to spread Bökh around the world, you keep it alive no matter what, right? And I think people know enough now with Mongolians to know that they're badass, right? So I don't have to prove that the art works. I just gotta give people the opportunity to actually like have a chance to learn it, you know? So
通过杭盖，我们把这个蒙古文化、蒙古摔跤推广世界。